Welcome to Azure Flash News, and it is August 2nd. Still looking for the right mute button. There we go. We got it. Yeah. I'm not that good at that stuff. But anyway, I still don't have it. Maybe it's this one. There we go. Is that better? Or whatever. Anyway, it's a slight distraction. Whatever. So welcome to Azure Flash News. It is August 2nd.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to everybody. Yeah. TGIF, I guess. Except if it's Monday, and we like Monday. Thank goodness it's Monday.
Yeah.
We get to go back to work again. You'll notice that Tim is back.
I'm back.
With us, so which is excellent. We're glad to have Tim back. So, what are we going to talk about this morning?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about VMware on Azure.
Wait a minute. Aren't they our competitor?
Well, they used to be, and we, had Hyper-V. We still do have Hyper-V. It's still offered. But as more companies are transitioning to the cloud, we have partnered with some of the VMware solution partners to make an offering to help our customers to migrate more easily to Azure.
That's right. And Azure and VMware together. We'll get more into that here in just a minute.
Yeah.
What else? Let's see here.
We're going to talk about the Blueprint service.
Right.
So Azure has a service called Blueprints for making repeatable constructs, artifacts that can be reused over different subscriptions to make sure you're compliant and building things in the same way.
Yeah, we got some cost management updates. We've got some stuff about running SQL and Windows Server. We'll kind of get into that here in a minute. And then a little bit about this is kind of interesting.
This is interesting, yeah.
Dedicated host. So we'll kind of dive into that, talk to you about what that is, but basically it's Azure Dedicated Host. So a little sneak peek. Okay, so we are going to start with moving your VMware resources to Azure. And I mean, we've had a VMware type offering for a little while, but we've added some stuff, I think. Or maybe this is just mostly kind of a review, and it's not really much of an announcement, maybe.
Yeah, so it was the VMware on Azure offerings were announced as GA in, I believe it was late April, early May timeframe. Okay.
So 3 or 4 months ago.
3 or 4 months ago, yep. And so we've had some customers in a private preview running this for an extended period in their production workloads and things along those lines.
Yep.
So this is ready for prime time, fully ready to go. You can use all of the VMware APIs and the tools that you're accustomed to and the things that you're used to using to manage your VMware workloads in this Azure state. So what actually happens is that it provisions bare metal resources for you. And it's running ESX just like your host would on-prem. But in addition to that, then it exposes this as a first-party resource into Azure. So you can start to use Azure services on top of this as well. So you can look at the VMs that you see in VMware with your VMware tools, but you can also look at them with Azure tools. So Azure Monitor can tie in here and things along those lines.
That was kind of the part I didn't actually realize. I really thought before I kind of was diving into this, I was sort of just expecting like VMware running in our data center, and that was kind of it.
Yep.
But it's not. It's like the hardware that VMware is running on is integrated with our fabric. So like for instance, this was kind of a surprise to me. You go into ESX or vice versa, go into the Azure portal. You go into the Azure portal, you can create a VM on VMware and you can see it in the VMware cluster.
Yes, yeah.
So you create a VM on the VMware Azure service. If you just create a VM in Azure, you won't see that. But if you create a VM and tell it to create it on this Azure VMware resource, you'll see it on-prem.
Yeah.
You'll see it in your vSphere.
Yeah, vSphere. Yep. And
I was a little bit like, wow.
Yeah, well, and so it's cool from that perspective where you can start to use those Azure tools that you're familiar with. But it's also really cool, I think, because what this enables you to do is to have an easier on-ramp to Azure, because what we're providing you with is the ability you can vMotion between these clusters just like you do on-prem, just like you would from data center to data center, and you're set to go.
Yeah, so for those of you who are VMware admins, you obviously know what it means by vMotion, but like you literally say, replicate your VM up to Azure, and then I'm going to basically like real quick flip it over to where it's running in Azure.
Yeah, it's a really compelling service, I think, for companies that have a very strong VMware practice in-house and might not be as strong in Azure yet. I think that it's something to definitely look at to start to give you some capabilities where you're getting out of your data center maybe, or getting a disaster recovery region, something along those lines, where you no longer have to buy a second region, you no longer have to get a colo set up somewhere with your own hardware. You can start to use this as an option for you.
Yeah, and the things that you don't have to do. So what you know is that you get to use VMware, but what you don't use anymore is you're on the Azure network.
Right.
You get Azure egress. Since you're on our virtual network, you can easily stand up something like Azure Firewall to provide yourself an egress firewall. So you really get onto the full SDN, the software-defined network. But like you said, it's also monitoring. I mean, I know there is some monitoring in the VMware, so that continues to happen. But think about it this way. If you have some other applications that are platform services that integrate with this VMware environment, you can actually still have one pane of glass. I kind of hate that's such an overused term, but you can still have one place to go to see the performance of your PaaS resources and your VMware VMs, like all right there in one place. So it's very integrated with the Azure management fabric.
Yeah. One thing that I forgot to mention that is very important is you no longer have to worry actually about patching that underlying infrastructure as well. So it's a managed ESX environment for you. Yeah. So ESX being the operating system that VMware runs. So you have to still manage the virtual machines, of course, but you no longer have to worry about upgrading to the newest version of VMware, for instance. So that's a really compelling feature as well, that you don't have to take on that management.
So if you are, if you're a big VMware customer and you want to try out cloud, there's really no reason there's very low friction now to start getting into cloud. So in other words, if you feel like moving from VMware to something else is such a big leap that you just kind of are not sure how to get started, that question is answered.
Yeah.
You can get started and get a lot of value out of moving to cloud just by relocating your VMware infrastructure into the cloud and taking advantage of the SDN, our global, like for disaster recovery, this is a different way to think about it. Today, if you don't have a disaster recovery area, you can move into one of our regions and then create another VMware in another region, and start, so it's a way to get out of your data center and into a global data center system.
Yeah.
All build through Azure.
Yeah.
So anyway, really cool. So if you're a VMware customer, go try it out. Okay. All right. So there's some new blueprints for NIST SP 853. Why don't you just go ahead and go into details exactly. What is exactly NIST SP 800-53? We'll just talk about that for about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Deep dive. No, we can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not really compliance experts, but we do have compliance experts on our staff, and what they've done is they've built Azure Blueprints. So let's take a step back. So I mentioned it a little bit before, but this is a free service, and it uses existing tooling or primitives, I guess, in Azure to make a reusable blueprint to stamp out things in a way that you would like. So it combines Azure policy, ARM templates, and RBAC to make things happen in Azure. And so what we've done, so this is an example of this particular compliance requirement, NIST SP 853. But what this is showing is that we're working on building out a way to make it so that you can copy this blueprint and it will start to build your subscriptions automatically for you in a way that stays compliant with this. And so, one of the things that it mentions in this article is that we're starting here, but we're going to build a high trust blueprint. We'll have FedRAMP blueprints soon, NIST SP 800-171, and then the CIS, the Center for Internet Security benchmarks as well, good. Which I know I've got a ton of customers that care about the CIS benchmarks. And there's guidance on how to do this all yourself, but it's a lot easier when it's built out for you. And
and just briefly, just to give you some ideas of what this includes, it includes like helping you map the controls like account management, separation of duties, least privilege, remote access. So like remote access, like, I don't know, maybe it sets up Azure Bastion. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But whatever the requirements are in NIST, they map that to the Azure primitives, kind of like you're saying. They map that to our capabilities, like you need to have logging turned on or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this blueprint makes sure that log analytics is deployed and that the resources are logging to log analytics or whatever. And that you need to retain it for 90 days. Well, it makes sure that the retention on log analytics is set to 90 days. So it kind of like helps you map all of that stuff into an actual deployment. And I think Azure Blueprints are really good at this sort of virtual data center concept. Like I need this big area where I can deploy stuff. And a lot of times it's VMs. I need a place to deploy stuff, and I need it to comply with all this stuff. This compliance stuff really maps well to VMs. It's a little bit more challenging with PaaS resources, although I'm sure we can do it. But this really can help you get going quickly deploying this kind of stuff. And even if you deploy it to see what we did, even if you come up with your own solution, you can still use this as a
starting point. I mean, you can take the blueprints, and blueprints allow for versioning and things along those lines. So you can take this and modify it. The other thing that I really like about this when they start to talk about it is that the way that the blueprints work, as we mentioned, we'll have RBAC and ARM templates and Azure policy. Well, all of those features in and of themselves are free. So ARM templates, you might deploy a resource that has a cost to that service that's being deployed. But Azure policy, for instance, is a great example. So when you're talking about logging and things along those lines, and you can know that it's been set up that way initially with the ARM template. We've been set up to keep the logs for 90 days or whatever. Azure policy can actually then enforce that for you and make sure that you don't have to worry about someone going in and changing that in a way that's non-compliant then with your compliance regulations.
And Azure policy can also be, or for instance, if you deploy an additional VM, the policy says this VM must comply with, for instance, the logging goes to log analytics, right? And so either Azure policy can remediate, it can actually deploy if not exists. And so it could deploy the setting to turn on the logging. It can do that. But it can also just surface and say to you, hey, red alert, somebody created a VM and it's not being logged, and you can go fix it, right?
Yeah.
So that may be good enough. But anyway, just one of the ways that we try and make it easy for us to have sort of an active compliance process that's constantly watching for you.
Yeah. And I would say if you haven't checked out blueprints yet, this is definitely, and you have compliance requirements like this, definitely a place to get started to look at how the Azure experts have built out an example for you of what it might look like. And then you can take that, like you said, and build your own stuff.
Yeah, it's very cool. Okay, cost management. I mean, I've always kind of thought, well, for a long time, we had a kind of a gap around people looking at their costs. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's not true anymore. Completely not true.
Right.
And we continue to get updates into cost management. And so if you haven't tried Azure Cost Management, don't be confused with we bought a company called Cloudin.
Correct.
And we might have even called it Azure Cost Management. Like, I'm not sure, or something like that. I can't remember. But Azure Cost Management we're talking about here is in the portal.
Yes.
It's not in another tool.
It's not in your EA portal.
It's not in your EA portal. There's a lot of updates in here about the EA portal. But it's all in the Azure portal, and it's free for all of your Azure resources. And we actually even already have AWS. So if you have some resources in AWS, hopefully not too many, if you have some resources in AWS and you'd like to see the cost of those inside of Azure Cost Management, you can do that. So this is all in the cost management portal.
Yeah. Some of the things that I thought were interesting about this announcement, it's always good to see these lists of service announcements to see all the innovation that we're doing. Yep. But there's two particular things that I thought was interesting, which is the Cost Management Labs feature, which is a way to look at some of the preview features that we're introducing in cost management, because this is a newer service. It's very mature, I would say, at this point.
I think it is too.
I've used competing products, and I've seen competing products in this space, and I think that this is a really compelling offering. Azure Cost Management is free for your Azure costs.
Yep.
So with any of the other third parties, you're almost guaranteed going to be paying a percentage probably your spend, which is similar to how it works with us with your AWS costs, but your Azure costs are free. But so this is a newer service, like in the last year, I think is when it went GA.
Yeah.
And so it's being constantly developed and improved, and the labs will let you take advantage of and see some of those new features as they're developing them. So if you wanted to see how to share a customized view or download a view that you've customized as an image, those are things that you can start to do now.
So like, for instance, download the customized view as an image might be that you need to put, I know this is terrible, but you might need to get an image and put it in a presentation.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I mean, we all kind of hate taking screenshots of graphs and putting in presentations, but because it's a dead end, like it gets old, it gets stale. But you can do that natively, as well as save and share customized views. So that means you can actually come up with an Azure Cost Management view of like, oh, well, this is a certain way I looked at the cost and broke it down by tags or whatever, and then I share it with somebody else.
Yeah.
So they can see it too. I can share it with a colleague, or I can share it with a team saying, hey, I was looking at your costs, and you see how I looked at this? I'm noticing that your development or sandbox costs are way out of whack. What's going on? And they're like, oh, we forgot to turn off our 100 node Bitcoin mining. No, that would never happen. People would never do that. But anyway, yeah, I agree. Cost management labs, that's really cool. What else? What else do you like?
The other thing isn't really a cost management announcement per se,
Yeah.
but we now support the ability to tag your resources with up to 50 different tags. I think the reason why this was probably included in the cost management update is one of the primary motivators for tagging is for cost management.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because the only way to really do a fine-grained job of tracking your costs is through tags.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, even third-party tools, this may be also a driver too. I think you have to remember that the Azure Cost Management API, that our customers or the people that use that are people that do these third-party tools. And so it's very likely 15 tags is not very many, especially if you're building some sort of downstream third-party tool. So sometimes you can do the tagging in there, but by far the best way to do that, the tagging, is in Azure so that Azure Cost Management works, third-party tools work, any additional third-party tool that you decide to use later will work. So having the freedom to do 50 tags is really good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, last but not least, it says we updated the documentation. That's always good.
That is always good.
I'm glad we update the documentation.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Another one I think that goes along with this is the expanded use of resource tags and cost reportings. So you'll notice that VPN gateways now support tagging.
Yeah.
This is really important because if there are resources that don't support tagging, then kind of the whole system falls down.
Yeah.
If you, like, for instance, I know that not too long ago we started supporting not service bus, but the service bus messaging. So now you can actually see those because it just came up as in a resource group called
Classic Services
or whatever.
Like that,
Yeah, that wasn't good. So now that's all there. So we're going to continue making sure that all of our resources support tagging. It's really important.
Yeah, and there's very few now at this point that don't, but we do have a list. There's a link in here, I think, that shows what resources support tags, and I would think in that same list that there's going to be a list, of what is not supported from a tagging perspective. So that's something to look at if you're interested in that.
Tagging is super important. Okay. Is that it? Let's look here. Save, shared, cost. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Oh, no, I need to talk about the EA portal. So over time, we've really been migrating not migrating away from the EA portal because it's still there, still available, but we're migrating the capabilities into the Azure portal. We have too many portals. We need to have one, and we're continuing to get there on that vision. And so now you'll notice that you can actually manage departments and policies that's like an EA portal thing. You can now do that in the Azure portal. So if you want to turn on and off the Azure Marketplace, for instance, that was an EA portal thing before. Some of you, I'm even kind of thinking that most of the people watching probably don't mess with the EA portal. It's usually like procurement because it's like a billing thing, but there are important things in there that like a cloud operations person would care about. Like, do you actually want to allow people to build Azure Marketplace things that have cost?
Yeah.
Because those Azure Marketplace costs can't come out of your Azure commitment. And that's come back to surprise people sometimes where they had to write a $100 check to Microsoft, which is kind of a weird procurement thing to do. You just expect for the stuff to come off your agreement. So anyway, go check it out. It's really important for you to kind of understand these new capabilities because it might actually matter quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it sounds like people are still running Windows Server and SQL Server.
Yeah, I guess that is true.
Of course people are.
You know, and a lot of customers still have on-prem environments, and one of the things that Microsoft does really well is hybrid offerings. And so we have an article that was published this week on running your Windows Server and SQL Server workloads in hybrid environments. You know, and it talks about some of the different modes. You know, we've got Azure Stack, for instance, if you wanted to have the Azure APIs on-prem. But I think that some of the more interesting or compelling things from my perspective are things like the Windows Admin Center tool. For those of you who are Windows Server admins, if you haven't looked at this tool, it came out with Server 2019. I believe it will manage all the way back to Server 2008 R2 though. It's a great way to start to manage your resources, and it will work for both. You can have, so what it is it's a tool that you will install on your workstation or on a server, for instance, and you can then manage all of the servers that you have access to, groups of servers, and you can RDP into them through this tool, and you can manage group policy through this tool. So it's kind of like the old MMC concept, I guess, a little bit, but it's been vastly improved, and it's really slick and easy to use. You can manage both your IaaS in Azure and your on-prem VMs with this tool.
What's funny is because I think a lot of people, they get they get something into their mind that infrastructure as a service in the cloud is vastly different. And while there are some differences, I mean, on the whole, it's kind of the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times you can use all the same tools you're using, like monitoring, for instance. If you're already using SolarWinds or whatever you're using, you can keep using that. And like, this is another example of, like, you can keep monitoring. If your desktop has access to the on-prem machines and the cloud machines, which if you have ExpressRoute or whatever, you can keep managing them like they're in one data center.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, Mark. You know, some of the other things that they call out in here is that we really have a single identity platform as well from that hybrid perspective. You know, with Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, you have one place. You know, it's synchronized, but you've got one identity structure to manage those identities. You can connect, like you said, with ExpressRoute.
Yep.
We now have up to 100 gigs per second if you wanted to use ExpressRoute Direct
That's fast.
That's very fast. Yeah, I mean that's probably faster than a lot of our customers actually have going to their corporate data centers today. Yeah. So so if that is a need, but we also, you know, we'll go down to as low as 50 megabits per second for ExpressRoute. There's also VPNs and things like that, but ExpressRoute is a compelling offering in that perspective.
It doesn't take long before customers are ready to move out of a VPN solution and into ExpressRoute. It doesn't take long. Okay, that's good. I like that one. That's good. It's always good to be kind of reminded that on-prem still exists, hybrid exists. How do we manage them together? That we're focused on that because we know that's the situation that you're in. You can't just pick it up and drop it all into Azure, which we'd love for you to do. Although I've seen people migrate hundreds of VMs in not very many weeks. So it can happen very quickly, but if it can't happen quickly for you, for whatever reason, compliance or budget or resources or whatever, you know, we're still trying to take care of you. We're meeting you where you are.
Yes.
In a hybrid environment, you know, we want to be there for you. So, okay, and then we have one more. Okay, so this one seems like an anti-pattern in the cloud, right?
That's a really good point, actually, Mark. Yeah.
This seems like an anti-pattern. So people that aren't watching, they have no idea what I'm talking about. This is the announcement around Azure Dedicated Host.
Yeah.
So this means that we are giving you a piece of hardware from top to bottom and dedicating it just to you so that they're, from a compliance point of view and probably other reasons, that we can guarantee that you're not sharing with anybody else.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, that might be an advantage to you to be able to say, and this is an IaaS thing. So this is all about infrastructure as a service. Although we do actually have some dedicated offerings in PaaS as well. But this is an IaaS offering here. And you can actually go in and create a dedicated host to you on, I think it's DV3 and F or something like that, or E, I can't remember.
I think it's E's.
Yeah, it's E's. And so you can actually go into there and see a little bit more about what the hardware is, what the host is like, the processor brand. Like, you get a little bit more information so that from a compliance point of view.
And I think, you know, one of the things that's always interesting is licensing models, and that comes in even with Microsoft licensing. And so that's one of the reasons why this could potentially, I mean, you were talking before the show about a particular form of SQL licensing that might make this a more compelling offering to you than splitting up your EA or your SQL license. To move them all to Azure, you could have your SQL environment moved to this kind of a dedicated host.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of this middle paragraph here. Is you can, I'll highlight it for those of you watching on video. You can deploy as many Windows Server virtual machines as you want on the host. Okay, so what I read is, I haven't tried one of these yet, but what I read is that you can oversubscribe. So in other words, if you get yourself a 2x16 machine or whatever, I mean, I would assume if you're going to bother to get a dedicated host, you're going to get a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, why get something
I
small?
think it's at 3,000 vCPUs and something that I was looking at.
Okay. Okay.
Earlier, so.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So if you get one, you're going to get lots of processor power. You're going to want to load it up. So if you use, like this one talks about Windows Server, but the same thing applies in SQL. If you use your software assurance data center licenses with software assurance, the whole point of that is if you buy 2 procs of we're going to go into licensing for a second. If you buy 2 procs of data center for Windows Server and you have software assurance, you can put as many VMs on there as you want. You don't have to pay per VM. And so you can do that here now and say, I'm going to buy, I have so many cores on-prem, I'm going to move those to the cloud for Windows Server, and now I can put as many VMs on there as I want. And so you can kind of start managing it like you do on-prem, where you just say, I'm going to buy for the physical capacity and put as many VMs in there as I want. Now, there is some trade-off there.
Yes.
Because now your VMs are all on one host, right?
One host, and one host that needs to be patched, one host that needs to be maintained, you know, so...
So you start thinking about like, oh, well, then I need 2 hosts, and then I need to like make sure my application runs across those 2 hosts. I mean, like, so you're getting back into on-prem land here.
Yeah.
So I think there are situations that we've decided it makes a lot of sense. Customers really want to be able to do this for certain reasons, for either licensing, migration. I can also imagine it's a really good migration strategy to say like what if you have Oracle licenses? And Oracle licenses are really hard to deal with in virtual environments. You could say a dedicated host, I'm gonna put my VMs on there. It simplifies things.
Yeah.
And if you're migrating off of Oracle, which a lot of people are, don't tell Larry. Don't tell Larry. Then it's like this might be a way to help get yourself off Oracle, because I think I've never heard. I haven't heard a lot of customers saying, I'm really doubling down on my Oracle relationship. I'm going to buy more Oracle. I just generally don't hear that. I hear people generally saying, we got to get off of Oracle. We got to reduce our Oracle spend. It's hard to do, but that's what I hear people saying. So maybe this is a way to kind of help you. I don't know.
Well, and the one that they specifically call out is compliance, and so it's interesting because we actually had 2 different compliance-related topics today.
We did, didn't we?
One of the things that I do want to call it, because you mentioned that this is an anti-pattern, because you have now this on-prem environment. Azure has, I think last time I saw something, this could be a little out of date, but we had 91 different compliance certifications. So we have the most compliance certifications of any public cloud provider. So I think that as an architect, I would, if you came to me and you said, I really want to go to dedicated host for compliance reasons, I would push back a little bit and say, what is the compliance reason that's driving here? I think that's something
because I think we might have been able to cover it already.
Yeah, exactly. And so take advantage of the cloud instead of living in this on-prem model. I think that some of the stuff that you were talking about with the licensing, to me, is a little bit more compelling of a reason to look at something like this.
Yeah.
Compliance, I would push back on that a little bit and see what it is exactly that we're trying to comply with.
Because I think one of the goals of going to the cloud would be to not do this.
Yes, exactly.
Is to move farther away from on-prem. I mean, you're still getting a lot in that you're getting monitoring.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting, like you could spin this back up really quickly. You can use our image packaging technology. I mean,
it's fully tied into the Azure management suite.
The
platform just like VMware.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Yeah. And like, for instance, even if it's just different in that, you don't have to upgrade, patch, maintain the Azure Fabric like you do VMware, for instance. Just to get into that Azure thing. So anyway, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Go take a look. Is it available today? Can you actually?
It's in preview. It requires a nomination process. Is what I believe I saw. So you will have to.
I'm not surprised. There's probably only so much hardware we have, and so we're just keeping it from running out by people just being like, oh, I just want to play with that.
Yeah.
So if you're serious about it and you really want to try it out, please feel free. My guess is that they'll have plenty for people who want to use it. And eventually, I think it'll be a lot easier for you to just try it out.
Yeah.
Today, you need to be nominated. Nominate, and we'll see if we can get you involved. So.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. That's it for the day.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you, Mark?
People can find me on Twitter at mgarner, or you can email me directly, which is just fine. mgarner@microsoft.com. Feel free to do that.
Yeah.
And what about you, Tim?
So you can get me via email at sullivan.timothy@microsoft.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me as one of the hundreds of Tim Sullivans in the world, but I'm one of 3 that's at Microsoft.
There you go. So you've got it down to 3. You've got a 33% chance. And if you're not sure, you can get the video
And look at
your picture.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So thanks everybody for coming. Oh, one more thing before I thank you, which I will do in just a second. Don't forget to check out the Twitter feed at Azure Flash News. Catch us there. Also, you can catch us on Stitcher or on Google Play or on Apple iTunes podcasts and on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to upload last week's. I just realized that. Oops. I'll do that here in just a minute for those YouTube subscribers who are not watching it because I haven't uploaded it yet.
Yeah.
And then so you can catch us there. Please tweet us if there's somewhere where you feel like we're not broadcasting that you'd like to see us. If there's another podcast platform, just let us know.
Yeah.
Tweet at us or send us an email. And you can also catch us on AzureFlashNews.com. You can get back shows there too. So thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. We know it's an important part of your day to carve out 30 minutes and see what's going on. So we really appreciate that. We do this for you guys, and we're glad you're here.
Yeah. Thanks to Doug and Emily from the MTC for producing and giving us this great space. So.
Yeah. We really appreciate that. We couldn't do it without them, without a doubt.
So as Rick would say,
keep your hands on the keyboard, keep your head in the clouds. Thanks everybody. See you next week.
Bye.